So
that's what this whole podcast is about.
Being
Bringing
open.
other event planners up in the world.
Putting the fun.
That's right.
in
Making
event
it
planning.
fun. Because if you're not getting paid, it's not fun.
All right, here we are, episode 3.
Already?
We're back.
That was fast.
It is. Time flies when you're having fun. Putting the fun in event planning. This week is all about
How do we charge?
how do we charge. I just don't know. I just don't feel like we should talk about this. It just feels like I'm revealing my personal secrets.
Good stuff. That's why people are listening.
All right.
Because they want to know how to be an event planner
There you go. I think
and have fun doing it.
I think in all the years that I have tried to figure out how to charge, I've never heard anyone talk about the subject.
Really?
Yeah. I've looked high and low, trying to figure. I've heard people say things like, like a wedding planner is probably 10% of the total budget.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that doesn't help, but I mean, it is helpful. It is true. It's good, but it sounds like, I don't know. So what are different philosophies in charging? What are our options to charge?
Well, there's kind of 3 basic ways of figuring out how to charge. One is a fee base. Say I'm going to do this event for, let's say, $10,000, whatever that number is. And whatever you do for them is just kind of fits within that $10,000 fee.
It's like a
And
job
you kind of
description.
describe what you're going to do for them and say, okay, I'll do all this for $10,000. Then another way to charge, which we don't really do very often, is an hourly rate.
We don't do it because it takes too much work.
It's hard to keep track of your hours when you're doing an event.
I worked 45
When you're
minutes on this
planning an event.
project and 15 minutes writing it down.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry.
No, but that's
We do have some clients we charge hourly for.
yeah, absolutely. And then the last one is kind of a commission based, where you're running all the vendors through you, and you're getting a commission based on what the contract amount is for each of those vendors.
Yeah, I think that's definitely an old school way that is helpful. And I would even say to people starting new, in the field, that might be an option for you.
That reminds me of a
do-
conversation we had at the Smart Meetings event
Yeah.
with that lady. Remember her?
Absolutely.
She was a great lady.
Very, very helpful.
Who's she with?
I know. I remember, but I'm not going to say it.
Okay. Well, it's a large company, and she was booking a lot of events, and she pretty much paid for all of her fees from the commissions that she got from her vendors. So when she booked a hotel, she got a commission from the hotel for booking at their hotel. When she booked a AV company, she got a commission from the AV company. And that's how she paid her bills and made her money, and she was doing really well with it.
And she also did exclusive agreements with her vendors, which really impressed me too. So if she worked with a
Got
hotel,
us thinking.
yeah, she worked with a hotel, she would ask them not to book with their client without her being a part of that. And that was pretty interesting stuff to me.
And we do that some with some of our vendors, like with our tablecloth company. They'll charge the customer a full price, and then we'll get a commission based on whatever that full price is. We'll make a little bit of money. It's not like we're not not necessarily keeping the electric bill
We don't have a beach
paid
house.
with that. But that is one way that we are able to charge.
Yeah, I think the best. Well, first of all, whatever you charge, be above board with it. Make sure the client knows how you're charging. There are times that we might do a mix of a fee based and a commission based, but we're going to make sure that client always knows that.
For example, planner points with a hotel.
Exactly.
If you're planning a meeting, a large gathering of people coming to stay in a hotel, the hotel is going to give you planner points, and you can talk to your client and say, "Hey, we're getting planner points for this. Because of that, we're lowering your fee by a certain amount to kind of compensate for that, because it's worth something to us to get those planner points, and they don't need planner points, so they're happy to get a lower fee if they can pay less
They win in the end.
pay less for their planning, then it's a win-win for both people.
I also try to always be upfront if a vendor is or a venue or anybody is treating me well, I make sure my client knows that. So like if a vendor is giving me a free hotel stay or something like that, I want my client to know, hey, this venue is incredible, but we also get free hotel stays
Yeah.
here.
Or if they're
And,
not paying your hotel stay,
or if they're not, yeah, tell them
as the
that
case
too.
may be.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So how do we? I think how do you figure out that fee? How do you figure out what that's going to be?
Well, I think part of it is just kind of going on some historic numbers that we've charged in the past. For similar projects, we would charge a similar fee, just making sure we're making money on that. So I think part of it is, we've done studies on projects before where we've kind of calculated, okay, how many hours did we spend on this event, planning the whole thing, time spent at the venue, time building stuff, working with vendors, having the production meetings, all the planning meetings. Then we've added all that up and just kind of saw, are we making any money on this? If we charge, a certain amount per hour, how much are we making?
Yeah, I think for people starting new, what I would definitely say is kind of figure out your hourly rate. Even if you never charge an hourly rate, what's your hourly rate? What do you if you're working a job somewhere and you're making $20 an hour and you want to be in business for yourself as an event planner, then it's unreasonable to expect you're going to go out and make $200 an hour overnight. You're going to make $25-$30 an hour comparable to that, and hopefully you work a lot more hours trying to figure stuff out and doing stuff, that sort of thing. So I definitely say start slow. I think the best thing that's helped me through the years has been talking to my clients pretty openly about it sometimes, especially the early years. We don't do that as much anymore, but I think in the early years I would say, what's in your budget? What are you planning on paying an event planner? What have you paid other people? And what are my services worth? And I think in the early years, especially, I thought a lot about where could they get similar help and what would it cost?
Yeah.
So if, in the early years, it was like, well, I'm probably equal to an assistant, so if I'm just making phone calls and getting acquainted with people and trying to figure stuff out, that's no different than Shelly, who works in their office, and Shelly could do that for $25,000 a year or whatever. Then I'm just doing half a year, fourth of a year, and I'm going to figure that out. That's not true anymore. I think now we are much more at the professional level. When a client hires us, they're paying for our knowledge, they're paying for our experience, they're paying for our insurance,
relationships with our vendors,
exactly,
our knowledge of the industry,
absolutely, and really every event that's gone before us, they're paying for that.
So I think your hourly fee has to reflect that.
Absolutely, and I think we're both older. We both have a professional background, and I think that's really helped us to kind of figure out what that hourly rate kind of is. So we put ourselves in the same category as professional accountants, the top of the line accountants, architects, designers, interior designers. What else? People like that.
Yeah, I think that's good.
Yeah, we put ourselves in the same category, and so our reflections that. So I think it's hard to charge hourly for a project that has an end to it. I think what that's going to be, and I think it's intimidating to a client to say, "I'm going to charge you, $75 an hour or whatever for the next 6 months every time I make a phone call." A lot of people are successful at that. I've found that challenging because I think the client's going, "How much am I going to spend? What's that really look like? What kind of time is that?"
How do you know?
Yeah.
I think that's actually a little bit dangerous to do an hourly not to exceed. It's dangerous for both parties because when you get to a certain point, if you go over what they expect and you haven't finished the job, what happens?
Yeah.
Do you just stop working and hand them an unfinished project? That doesn't work.
That's bad,
and especially for an event.
So yeah, I really like the fee, and there's times that we've done really well with our fee, and there's times you've learned like, wow, we didn't charge enough. So the other thing with that,
here's a secret. Don't go in thinking, okay, I'm going to charge them $1,500 this year, and next year I'm going to increase
Oh
it.
yeah,
That doesn't work.
never do that.
If
Um,
if you know that this project is going to cost you $5,000, charge them $5,000. Don't come in low thinking, oh, next year I'll increase it. Because when you do that, you set an expectation. You because they look at last year what it cost to make the event, and they may increase it 5 or 10% over last year, but they're not going to triple that budget for an event planner from year to year.
yeah, we have some long-term relationships that we're not charging enough, and I don't know that we ever will be able to. Um, and it's like, well, I hope their event's easier than it was.
That does get easier from year to year.
A couple of other things I just really want to say. One is I have a friend who said, "Don't ever discount yourself. If you have to get the price down,
well
if they need something, then take away services.
Right.
Figure out ways that they can do something else themselves or whatever. And that's been helpful. That's been really helpful to say, okay, we can't do that. Very rare, very, very, very rarely will we trade for services, and we do that with marketing, that sort of thing. My early years in my other company, I was really sloppy with that, and we've worked really hard to take that up a notch and make sure we're accountable, making sure we know we can justify it to anybody, record keeping, all that sort of thing, make sure we're getting what we trade for. So again, we very rarely do that. It has to be a pretty big exception. And I would say boldly, we have to be really getting something out of that to trade for that. So if it's something where we're going to have a better name recognition or meet some of our goals in marketing, then we might do that. But it's pretty rare.
So one thing we do is give our potential clients kind of a menu of services that we can provide for them. And we, for example, we have the planning chunk of planning the event, but then we also have the event graphics chunk that we can provide. And then we may have the videography chunk that we can provide, or the registration chunk that we can provide for help with. And I think that's a good thing. I think it depends on the client if they would rather see all that combined into one price. I don't know.
Yeah, I think
I'm
it's
still kind of on the fence about whether that's a good thing or not, giving them a choice to say no to options. And sometimes I think it's better to put it all in one price, and then if they ask you to take out something from your fee, maybe do that at a later date. But then you may not get a second chance to do that. So
kind of a close cousin to the commission is to upcharge things, and we have some friends who do that very successfully, who say,
Consistently.
"Hey, your event's going to cost $400,000, and we'll take that in cash, check, or charge." And I think for them it works out very, very well, because they can upcharge the photographer, they can upcharge even the venue, they can upcharge whatever, and their fee can be relatively low, if even non-existent. And I think that works great for them. We've talked about that a lot, and we have some clients that we've done that for. I think that's, if it's helpful to our client, that's a good thing. But again, we're upfront that, hey, this is costing you 20 to 50% more, because we're paying the bill, we're taking on the liability for it, we're signing the contracts, we're the one responsible for it.
We're the ones on the line.
So yeah, we're the ones on the line. That's worth a lot. So a lot of our clients prefer to pay the bills themselves, or somehow through that. We do upcharge on miscellaneous items. So again, we try to be upfront about that. But if our main reason,
typically not making a lot of money on that, though.
right? Yeah, and our main thing for that is, if we're running around town buying pillows or vases or whatever, or if we're
Votives.
spending hours votives,
$100 in votive candles.
we never have enough votives. We can buy them all day. We have them shipped in all the time. We're still running to local stores buying votives. I don't know what we do with them, but anyway, yeah. So we do upcharge on that, but again, we see that, and our bookkeeping team sees that as part of almost like a service charge, because of what we're doing. We're We're putting the money out front. We are going to the time, the trouble, the work, the miles, whatever it takes to get those. And then we're also stuck with either having them to store them or throw them away or return them.
Oh, that's a good.
I don't return things.
So that's something we have also kind of come to terms with in the last few years is if we create something for the client, like a prop or a backdrop or something, what are we doing with that after we are done with the event? Are we renting it to them? Are we selling it to them? And then what do we do with that afterwards? And so we're trying to be really clear with that with our clients and to say, okay, this is a rental. At the end of the night, we take it, we salvage anything we want out of it, and we throw the rest away. It's gone at the end of the evening. It's not something we're going to bring back next year.
So as we do podcasts, you get to know us better. You'll learn that I'm pretty transparent and open about a company that was not the most successful that I owned for a while. And I think probably one of our biggest downfalls.
It had a lot of successes, though.
Right. It did have, yeah, it did. But in the end, so I think one of the things I really learned from that was, well, probably one of our biggest downfalls was we kept everything. And so suddenly we had to have big warehouses and had an accountant friend who really helped me with that. If he challenged me on, look at this square foot, this is what this costs a year. If it's costing us $150 a year for this space right here. And he would show me with a piece of tape, this is what this is.
You have a lamp sitting here on the floor.
Exactly. Are you going to make $150, or better yet, are you make $300 a year on that lamp? If you are, then great.
But you had lamps that had been sitting there for 5 years.
They were cool lamps. I liked them. So we have
someone else will
really
like them in their house.
We've really worked to downsize tremendously. We just don't have stuff.
Yeah, we're pretty hard nosed about saving things after an event as well. If we don't have a plan for them, in the near future, then they get put up on eBay, or we have somebody sell them.
Goodwill, Salvation
Facebook
Army,
Marketplace, or whatever.
Dumpster.
And
and I think Todd's really helped me with that too, because I think part of it is even when we're purchasing,
or we donate stuff too. I mean, we did an event with fruit one time, and we took all the fruit to a food bank or whatever, and so there's ways to get rid of stuff after an event too. I think we took all the bicycle rims and took them to a bicycle shop when we did that one event where we did a mobile. So that's a cool way to get rid of stuff too.
Yeah, you feel good. You feel good about giving it back too. And I think for us, when we buy something, especially if it's something we can't rent, we can't talk someone into buying it for us, then we have to buy it. Does the client want it? 9 times out of 10, they don't. They don't want the hassle of it. They don't want to deal with it.
Or if they think they do,
yeah.
we can say, well, we can store that for you, but we're going to store that for you at a cost for however long you want it to be stored. We're happy to do that for a price.
We can deliver it to you.
Mm-hmm.
But
we do that for some clients.
Yeah, and I think
absolutely.
But I think we definitely think through what is the life of it. If we're buying something, will we use it again? How much space is it going to take? So again, our footprint's pretty small these days.
Mm-hmm.
Also, with charging, let's talk a little bit about labor. What that looks like, and also cost of doing business. What do you kind of two different subjects, but I think especially cost of doing business. We don't typically charge. This is a little tricky. We don't typically charge for travel. We don't typically charge for copies, meeting handouts, samples. We don't typically charge for samples. Things that we know. Hey, this is just kind of an office supply. We're going to use this if we're
part
taking
of the cost of doing business.
If we're taking safety pins to a client, we're not going to charge them. If we have an easel that we use, it's easy to get to, easy to take, we're not going to charge them for that. Mm-hmm. And travel is a little tricky. There are clients will say, "Hey, we can charge you travel, or can you get us a hotel room?" In fact, we're kind of getting a little bit in the habit of, if the client has a hotel room, this is especially like on weddings. if the clients have hotel rooms, then please will you get us a hotel room too as part of that. Um, but I chose a long time ago not to charge travel expenses because I don't think it's fair. And I don't think it's fair for lots of reasons. One is um, my hotel room may be nicer than you want to pay for,
Mm-hmm.
or it may not be as nice, and it's okay. Uh, I I like certain things in a hotel room, and I like to pick out my own, and so I don't see that I need to charge you for that. Or if I'm going to fly and stop in two cities, or I'm going to fly from one location to another and then fly back. I don't think the client should have to pick up all those extra fees when they can get a ticket, a round trip ticket for $300 if they were just going one place. So it's been a little bit of a challenge, and I think again sometimes we talk that through with a client, but I would rather work that in my fee, rather work that into kind of the cost of doing business as part of that travel, the mileage, and all that,
Is it,
and meals.
kind of have to think about, is it worth it to you to have this client and figure that into your fee?
Yeah, absolutely,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely. And the other thing along with that, I think, is I don't want a client ever not choosing me because of either my travel habits or my extra expenses.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to make sure the client knows anything I'm spending extra. So um, we kind of think through 5 to 10% of our fee is going to be probably spent on somewhere on our client, either on travel
Mm-hmm.
or on lunches or on a meal for
Some
them,
kind of client
a
gift,
gift
maybe.
back to them,
Mm-hmm.
something like that. And again, that's a little based on um, how generous the fee is. Like if there's room for
Sure.
that, but we try to make that happen.
Mm-hmm.
What else? Upfront pay, pay
Oh yeah,
late.
timing.
Yeah, how do you do all that?
My favorite way is to, because we are in the planning business, we do need a certain amount up front. And I typically like to ask for half up front and then half like the month of the event. Some clients would rather pay monthly, and I like that a lot because it kind of spreads it out. Because you are working from the time you start a project, you're working every month on something probably for that project. It's a little more intense towards the end of the project usually, but it just kind of spreads that fee out monthly. And it's nice to have that regular income and kind of more dependable income. Um, and then other clients will do quarterly, like once a quarter, whatever. Other clients will want to pay the whole thing up front. That's a little risky to me. I'd rather have it kind of spread out a little bit, just so we don't use all of our money before we get to the event, and then we don't have any money to pay our vendors. But um, that's a little bit more of a management issue, I'd say. But
So we did have a client this year for the first time I think I've ever had a client ask, um, why do we have to pay you before services are rendered? Why can't we pay
mm,
you afterwards? And this was a client that I know they're good for it. Um, it was an interesting situation where it's like, well, that's a really good question, but how do I know you're going to pay for it? and, and
yeah,
I don't know.
good point.
We use the example a lot of building a house, and if you're building a house for somebody, if you're a contractor building a house, you don't typically say, hey, you can pay me 30 days after the house is built, because you're saying, hey, when we close, we want to be paid in full. And so, sure, there might be a time where we say, hey, the day of the event, you need to pay us the rest before that event happens. I don't know what I would do if they didn't. That's a good question.
Hmm.
Uh,
So I come from an architect background, as some of you guys know, and our payment process was we get paid at the end of each phase of work, phase of design. So schematic design, you get paid. And sometimes that's stages of schematic design, maybe 30%, 60%, 90% schematic design if it's a long project. And so you kind of spread those completion milestones out through the project. Um, I think that's a fair way to look at it. As you're making progress throughout the planning process, you're billing for those milestones of planning. Typically you're not planning for 2 or 3 years on an event, though. It's usually compressed into 3 to 9 months of planning. So
we did have a client that it was a multi-year plan for a big event, and their budget did not allow till the third year. So again, we made an exception
didn't
for that.
allow for
payment,
as in
they couldn't pay us any money till the third year.
And you were planning for 2 years.
Yes, you were part of that.
So a year after the event.
No. They paid us the year of the event, but it was a client we would do work with regularly. We know, and again, not a question that they were not going to be good for it. So that was kind of a risk we had to take.
Oh, I see. So we were planning for the event for 3 years, and the last year of planning, they paid us for the event. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't like intensive planning though. I mean, we were involved. We were kind of more visionary planning,
and we did have a
really
bad attitude sometimes.
Yeah, it was harder to do that.
Yeah, we kind of really want to make sure we don't do that again.
But we were working with them on other projects too, and getting paid on those things. So it was an ongoing relationship. It wasn't a one-time deal.
Absolutely.
I would be scared if that was a one-time client. We'd never worked with him before. I don't think I would be interested in doing that.
Yeah, the other thing I think to say is we want to make sure we know our clients. We know who they are. They've come recommended to us. If we don't, we're pretty cautious about that relationship.
Speaking the lady who called you from California, saying she wanted to.
Yeah. I hope Cheryl's listening. She's one of my favorite people in the world. I love her. She's just a great friend. She's great. I love her. I definitely call her a good friend now.
I hear this story about once a month.
It's one of my favorite stories. It's one of my favorite stories. So this has been 10 years ago now, but there was a scam going around where they would have an event planner call an event planner and say, "Hey, I'm I don't know, Cher's sister, Beyonce's sister, I don't know, whatever. And we got to plan a birthday party for them in 3 days, and I want you to hire this band. And if you'll go ahead and pay for the band, then we will, we'll reimburse you, get everything together and wire you the money." Yeah, it was all that sort of stuff. So I got this email that this had happened in Atlanta. And it was just kind of like, oh, wow, it's close by. And this event planner, this event planner lost like $100,000, this whole thing.
Yikes.
And so that afternoon, I get this call, and it's like the exact same story. It's this lady who says, "I'm planning my daughter's bat mitzvah. I live in LA. I want to have it, in 2 years, but I need to do all this work. I need to get stuff done. And will you be the event planner?" And it was just one of those things like, oh yeah, sure you are. And so I'll
get right on that.
I called all my friends in the Jewish community in the area where she lived, the church where she lived and everything, and no one knew her. Like no one knows her. So
what'd you do?
I went to the meeting thinking, you're not going to mess me up. So they drive matching cars up. She and her husband. They have they don't look like they're fluent.
Rented from
they do not
Joey's
look
limo service.
I found out later
Show up in their flip flops.
They it was cold. They had anyway. It was all legitimate. But my whole point of that was it took me a while to figure it out, and I did figure it out before I ever really proceeded with work with them. And I think sometimes we will get a call from somebody, and if they're asking if they can put on a credit card or something, it's like it's not real. Let's figure this out. But we typically come from your referrals. We know what's going on. We know who the people are. We know they have a good reputation. They're going to pay their bills. All that. So that's kind of my word for the wise. Just know who you're working with.
Do some research. Do some Facebook research.
It's too good to be true. It probably is.
Joe's an expert at Facebook research.
I'm kind of, what's that? 6 degrees from Kevin Bacon. I'm 2 degrees. I'm 2 degrees from Kevin Bacon. I kind of feel like I'm 2 degrees from everybody.
Yeah,
I can get a little arrogant with that sometimes, but really, I feel like it's a small world.
If you're not their friend on Facebook, you have a mutual friend.
Yeah, it's a small world. We can find each other, and I'm going to figure out what they're about. So anyway, that's all about our time. In fact, we've kind of gone over a little bit.
That's how we charge.
That's how we charge. What paying's about. So get in writing, do contracts. If you got questions about that, we'd love to answer them.
Yeah, I'd love to talk to anybody who has questions about fees or how to figure out fees.
We really are open about it, as you can see.
Go figure.
Didn't know that. So
that's what this whole podcast is about. Bringing other event planners up in the world.
Putting the fun.
That's right. Making it fun. Because if you're not getting paid, it's not fun.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
If you're not getting paid enough.
Nobody's having fun.
Exactly. All right. Talk to you later. Have a good week. Talk to you next week when the topic is...
Next week is how do we engage graphics and color for an event?
Oh, that sounds fun. That's yours. It's all about you.
Sounds like fun.
Talk to you later.